Welcome back, everyone, to the channel. I also want to welcome you back to the Pacers series. We are in our next installment, and we are going to be facing Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and the rest of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, if we take a look at some of Paul George's stats here, you guys see he's averaging 22 points, so he's leading the Thunder in scoring, closely followed by Russell Westbrook there at 21 points. Russell Westbrook is almost averaging a triple-double, and Paul George has a few steals to his name this season. One thing I wanted to highlight is they also have a combined 7 turnovers. So our team, with the theme of defense, guys, we are going to try to really get them going as far as get them turning the ball over, and maybe we can find some way to win with that formula. All right, everybody, we're going to open up the beginning of the gameplay with some of these starting lineups. Our starting lineup has not changed the entire season. We've had these same 5 starters. Their starting lineup, you see Russell Westbrook and Roberson in the backcourt, Paul George and Jeremy Grant on their forwards, and obviously they have the big guy right in the middle, Steven Adams, who is a insane rebounder. You guys will see a little bit of that here in the gameplay. But as far as the NBA season, this guy is on fire. I mean, there's a reason he makes $100 million to do one thing, which is really, rebound. He's also a great shot blocker, and he can also catch lobs, which are, literally his only scoring option. So we do see here Russell Westbrook. They post him up a lot in this game. I guess that was their strategy. We had a closely contested first quarter. We were honestly trading baskets back and forth. Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis had some pretty good first quarters. They both had 10 points. Until we get a little bit later in the gameplay where things become a little bit closer, I kind of wanted to just talk about the Paul George impact and the Paul George trade for a lot of fans here in Indiana. Paul George, a guy that was taken 10th back in 2010. He went right after Gordon Hayward, who was from Indiana, and I really think if the Utah Jazz would not have picked Gordon Hayward, the Indiana Pacers would have ended up with Gordon Hayward. That's a story and a whole series of events for another video. Either way, we did draft Paul George. He had a slightly underwhelming rookie season. He did come back and really start to improve. He did some work over the summer, and he really came to light when we were in all those series against the Miami Heat and LeBron James. He really matured, and that's when not only the NBA knew, but all of the Indiana fans knew that we had a legit superstar on our hands. Paul George, he became a 20-point scorer, became a 22-point scorer, 24-point scorer. I mean, he has great length. He has a great ability to defend other players. He was a guy that was legit the next one in the East, and the Pacers fans were super hyped about that. He ends up breaking his leg. The Indiana Pacers fall out. Roy Hibbert's not doing as well. We trade Danny Granger. David West, he leaves to seek championships. And Lance Stevenson also, he got hot. He really improved his value and was able to sign with the Charlotte Hornets. So that all transpired. Pacers fans, they stuck together. We stuck behind Paul George. He was able to heal his leg. And then all of a sudden he comes out talking about he wants to be traded. And I labeled him as a traitor. I cannot believe that Paul George would do that. I am a big fan of guys who stay with the same franchise for a long time. Reggie Miller, obviously, one of the most famous Pacers in history. He actually stayed with Indiana for all 18 years, even through some trials and tribulations that he had here. I mean, there's a long history for another video with Reggie Miller. Either way, Paul George not wanting to follow in those same footsteps. He was from California, and he really felt like the Lakers was his calling. He didn't want to be in Indiana anymore. He said that we were not a winning organization, even though we did go to the Eastern Conference Finals with him that one year. And we lost in Game 7. We were number 1 in the East. I mean, we had winning teams, and I guess Paul George, he no longer wanted to be part of the culture here in Indiana with Larry Bird and all those guys. Frank Vogel was a great coach, so Larry Bird had nothing else to do but blow it up. They hired Kevin Pritchard to bring in Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, which we would have eventually got for the trade. A lot of people feel like we still wanted Larry Bird to be the president of basketball ops, obviously because he is one of the greatest players that the NBA has ever seen. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of eye for talent. But we really feel like the reason that he hired Kevin Pritchard and stepped down as an advisor is because he didn't want to trade Paul George. I guess he had different plans as far as just keeping Paul George, maybe seeing if they can work it out, offering him that max, offering him $70 million more than any other team. But that still wasn't good enough for Paul George. He did not care about the money, I guess. He wanted to be back home, and that's how things transpired. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the trades that were rumored around Paul George, some that I would take, some that I wouldn't take. So let's just kind of get started with that. The first trade that I want to talk about that I absolutely wouldn't do is the Paul George for Kevin Love straight up trade. I know that was rumbling just a little bit, but I feel Paul George is probably, I want to say maybe a top 20 player. Maybe you could argue to squeeze him in for the top 15. He is a dynamic scorer. He's also a great two-way player. So I can see kind of that ranking spot for him. Either way, on the other hand, Kevin Love, I wouldn't even put him in a top 30 NBA player. I mean, yes, he is a guy who can put up 20 and 10 on any given night, but he just does not have that killer instinct. And a lot of his value dropped, at least for me, in the 2017 finals, just because he missed almost every single shot that LeBron James got him. So immediately, I mean, if he was supposed to be a spot-up shooter, he obviously was not able to fill that role. Now, if he came to Indiana, obviously he'd probably be a go-to scorer. And if Kevin Love would have come to Indiana, maybe him and Miles Turner could have created some type of ultimate spacing some type of ultimate spacing like schemes. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that might not be too bad because, Kevin Love, he can play a little bit with his back to the basket. He showed that in Minnesota. And Miles Turner actually can play just a tiny bit with his back to the basket. So you could have some kind of crazy dual inside-outside threat. Either way, if I was the GM, I would not take that. Now, let's go over to some trades that I would have maybe taken. So one trade that was obviously, brought up is any type of way Paul George could have gotten to the Lakers. That's his destination. That was his place of choice. The Lakers really wanted him. They were able to, they were willing and able to give up other pieces. So one trade that maybe I could have seen myself doing was trading Paul George to the Lakers for D'Angelo Russell and their first-round pick, which ended up being number 2. I probably would have taken that because we could have gotten a great point guard for the future, a guy who can really light it up, play either guard spot, and then we could have used that number 2 to try to get another dynamic player who we could kind of build around with the rest of our young core. Another trade that was kind of in the works that came out after the fact was Paul George straight up for Klay Thompson. I definitely 100% would have pulled the trigger on this one. Klay Thompson, being on a team of his own, I'm sure if we give him a couple more shots, he would be averaging 28, 29, even in the realm of 30 points. I mean, he's that type of dynamic scorer. Anytime I see the Warriors play and Klay has it, I think that it's going in. So I definitely would have done that 10 out of 10 times. The Warriors obviously were just not interested. I did hear that the Pacers offered, and I can't blame them for that. The last one that I wanted to talk about was Kyrie Irving. I would have given Paul George and a first-round pick for Kyrie Irving. We would have done great. I think it would have been a better trade for the Cavaliers. I see why they did choose the Celtics because they got their Harvard Nets pick. Either way, in hindsight, I think they should have done it because Paul George was probably helping out LeBron a lot more than Isaiah Thomas. So, you guys, that's the next video. We talked a little bit about that. You kind of see how Indiana fans are feeling. I will catch you in the next episode. We're going on a crazy road trip. We'll have the first gameplay of a court besides Indiana's. I'll see you then. Thanks a lot.